Hello and welcome everyone to the Bow Valley Nonprofit Speaker Series. Just going to give a couple of seconds here for everyone to join the webinar. In the meantime, if you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat box and also state which organization you're with, that would be great. All right, so hello everyone and welcome to the Bow Valley Nonprofit Speaker Series. If you're looking for ways to connect, check out the Bow Valley Nonprofit Facebook page and also the discussion forum on the Bow Valley Nonprofit's website. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you missed it, please introduce yourself in the chat box at the bottom of the screen, including the name of the organization that you're connected with. The Bow Valley is located on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot and Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, Métis Nation Region 3, and all the people who make their homes in this Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. Before we get started, I'd like to share a few housekeeping tips. We've been getting around 20 participants to these sessions. Not everyone's been participating in the chat box discussions, but do know that if you are participating, it makes the session a bit richer. So we encourage you to please participate if you feel comfortable doing so. You can set your comment boxes to share with everyone or just with the host and moderators, panelists. And please stay around at the end of the webinar. We're going to be doing a short survey to help inform future sessions. Huge thank you to Tara and Ruth from FCSS at the towns of Canmore and Banff for sponsoring these webinars and making this possible. Today, I'm honored to welcome Kathi Irvine, who's our speaker and giving a presentation on the value of collaboration. Kathi Irvine is the co-founder of Watershed Organizational Development Group and has been helping organizations in public, private, and not-for-profit sectors since 2003. With over 20 years of leadership and training experience, she shares her extensive knowledge on leadership and management skills, change leadership, knowledge transfer, and employee engagement practices. She has taught at Langara College in Vancouver and Banff Center and has spoken about leadership practices to audience all over North America. My name is Moselle Dibden, and I'll be moderating the questions today. Now let's welcome Kathi.
Great. Thanks very much, Moselle. And I'm already playing with the share screen, the unshare screen, as I'm trying to get be able to pop into the chat box. So super lovely as we're seeing folks populate in. That's great. Some of you I'm familiar with. Christy, it's lovely to see your typing. I can't see your face, but lovely to see some familiar faces. So I'm going to go back to sharing the screen and hopefully I have it set up. Just when you think you know what you're doing, right? All right, let's go. And here we are. All right. So just a real pleasure to be invited to speak on the value of collaboration, but also speak with this group of the Bow Valley not-for-profits. I've worked and volunteered in not-for-profit for well over 25 years. And, you know, folks, it's been a super interesting journey to make the shift from corporate to not-for-profit and then doing the blend, because one of the things that I think we found the most is the transference of knowledge, the transference of intentionality between corporate and not-for-profit. And I'd say that not-for-profit has shared the power of mission, the power of values, the power of really being visionary in how they want to create a better world. And that's filtered into our corporate clients. And then what has moved from the corporate clients into the not-for-profits is the rigor, the key performance indicators, the measurements, the way to tell a story that really allows the story to get out. And actually, it's just making me smile because, Christy, I know that all of your work is around the power of storytelling with your camera. So we're going to be talking about the value of collaboration, and the one slide that I had popped up inadvertently, which you have seen, is this is a African proverb that I was introduced to easily 15 years ago. And it was one that really caught my attention. I was a sole consultant, a sole practitioner in a consulting practice. And I actually remember my brother talking to me at one point, and he said, Kathi, he says, you're just exhausting to listen to because it feels like you're always running. And to which point I probably said I was. But then I came across this quote, and it really allowed me to pause, and it really allowed me to reflect on, is it speed I'm looking for, or is it depth? Is it broad enough work that I want to be doing? Is it reaching out to all of the people that are important? And when I was putting together the presentation, this is what's so lovely about, good long walks or hikes out in the forest, because this quote came to me and it was like, of course, this is about collaboration. Of course it is. And so, we're going to spend the next hour, a little under, just talking about this whole idea of collaboration. And I've invited Mazel to stay on screen. So what we're going to, between the two of us, we're going to be monitoring the chat box. And we would really like this to be as collaborative in dialogue. So if questions come up, or if you go, hey, Kathi, could you explain that a little bit? Or, oh, hey, I've got a quick story. I'd love for you to pop that into the chat box. And then we'd be able to have this just a little bit more of an interactive session. I think it's really important, and Marcel's already mentioned it, that we're recording this session. So you can come back to it. You can also pass it along to folks if there's some things that actually resonated for you. And please do, type in, and we'll try and make this as engaging as possible. I do know as well that Mazel had sent out the slide deck, which I'm a fan of. Actually, I do love there's always a mix, right? Because some people say, no, I don't want to send out the slides because then they're going to know all my presentation. Well, there's a risk of that, but you still showed up, so I'm excited for that. But the other piece is for you to be able to kind of take notes as you go. There's also a worksheet in there, and I'll pause and we'll talk a little bit about that. But what I'm kind of confident and maybe hopeful is that you're here today because you do want to do something together, that you are wanting to have ways in which you can be in community rather than speeding along on your own. So here we go. So what we do hope you walk away with are these 3 items that are listed there. And I think what's important here is that this particular topic was a topic that came out from a little bit of research that was done. And Mazel, I wouldn't mind if you just pull yourself off mute for a second and then just share a little bit about how some of these topics came to be and why is it that we're talking about collaboration today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Kathi. So I think within the last year or so, the Tara and Ruth at FCSF, the towns of Canmore and Banff, sent out a survey to all the local nonprofit groups to find out more about what types of topics they're looking to learn more about. And one of the topics, and that's what's informed these speaker sessions, and that's why we've gone with the topics that we've chosen so far. And one of the topics that we saw quite a few people ask for was something on collaboration. And learning a bit more about how to go about it, what might be stopping an organization from considering this as part of their strategy, and really how to get started. So yeah, I'm really excited to have you here today, Kathi, to share that information.
Yeah, that's super. Well, and also well done on reaching out to the community and really crafting topics that are important for our community. So really just a deeper sense of what collaboration is in relationship to your organization, and where it might best apply, because collaboration is not always the answer to everything. But I'm going to suggest in where we are right now, I'm going to say collaboration is probably the more advantageous way to go. Let's say it that way. As our world gets more and more complex, an idea of what to look for in collaborative partners, like who might I be looking to, and ways to ensure that all parties are getting their needs met. And again, the piece here is it's not always getting them met immediately, but somewhere down the road. The second point, the idea of who to look for as a collaboration partner. This is where I really do want you to make sure you're tracking who's on this particular webinar. Moselle and I were chatting that, gee, wouldn't it be lovely when we can start to have these in person? Because one of the things that Bow Valley Not-for-Profits can offer is a place to come together, is a place to meet people that you don't otherwise meet. So in the meantime, we have the opportunity to see people's names and just what organization are they representing. And when we do get to be in person, we'll have a little bit of a sense of that maybe we were on a call together, maybe. But let's get just a bit of a sense of who is on the call by way of how your organization is structured. Now, one of the things, Moselle, that I have noticed now that I'm sharing the screen, I can't actually see the chat box. So you're totally in control on that one. But if you wouldn't mind popping up the first poll, just these ones are just to give us a sense of a little bit about each other's organization. So you can see there that what's the size of your organization from an employee perspective? And if you wouldn't mind, this is just a single choice one. I think it might be pretty straightforward, but just give us a sense of what's the size of the organization. All right, so what have we got? Yeah, so. Oh, I'd be quite interested in the other. So that's super. It's just me. Yeah, it was just me for a long time too. Me and a couple of full-time folks. You can see me, and for more full-time or contract folks, the individual that typed in other or had recorded other, if you wouldn't mind in the chat box, just popping in what does other mean, and then Moselle, if I could get you to share that with us. But in the meantime, let's pop up the other poll as well. So one is the first one was around employees, as you can see, and this next one is about board of directors.
I'm just going to jump on while we get everyone's answers for that one. So the other was, we are a group of companies with 400 plus employees, but 2 of us work on the nonprofit side of things. And someone else said they were having a problem writing in the chat box on the poll. Perhaps our organization is totally volunteer, and we have 14 members. That's BIHC, sorry.
Excellent, super, that's great. Thanks, folks. All right, super. So a split there for sure. And I do, I was laughing when I said, yes, I have, or when we created the poll, and one of the responses was the last one, yes, I have a board of directors made up of community members, but I didn't say that they were friends. So that kind of made me laugh, in that they probably are friends, but they come through the community. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how board of directors come about in one of the slides. So thanks very much for that. Just gives us an idea of who are we in conversation with today? Who are we spending our time with? So I always like to start a presentation when we're talking about a specific topic is, okay, so what does Oxford Dictionary state? And it's the action, so collaboration is the action of working with someone to produce or create something. And so this is what we're talking about. And you'll see that in the slides very quickly, is that this collaboration is far more sophisticated than just coming together in conversation or networking or just meeting new people. Collaboration is actually to achieve something. The one that I liked is the second one, is that there's a traitorous cooperation with an enemy. I just had to keep that one in there. No, we're not talking about that. But collaboration. So it really is about creating something. So creating a context for collaboration in a community is, I really quite appreciated us to be able to, in the Bow Valley, really consider all of the opportunities that we have to come together for our Bow Valley. So right from Lake Louise all the way to Exshaw, there's all kinds of opportunity to accomplish a shared vision for the entire valley. And it's in us getting to know each other that allows us to be able to see who else is doing what, and honestly be able to come together in a way that we can create a vision for our community. Another is achieving the collective positive outcomes. We come together in a way that we truly understand all of the audiences of the Bow Valley, and depending on how long any of you folks have been in the Bow Valley, it's changed and it's continuing to change. And you know, this COVID, the spring with the Three Sisters development, like it's just, we've so many opportunities to be able to come together in a collaborative approach to be able to create positive outcomes. Really be able to look at what's in some interdependencies that we can look at within the system that will be able to address the issues and the opportunities. And a lot of the work that I do with organizations really is looking at the whole system. And if we can create conversations that end up in collaboration, that address the entire whole system, then again, that's just a win for all of us. And of course, the sharing of resources and responsibilities. We'll talk more about that, because I think that that's probably one of the greatest opportunities in collaboration, particularly in the not-for-profit, when we're really trying to work really hard to have the very hard-earned money that we bring in to make sure that it goes as far as we can. So the shared resources and responsibilities can play a very big role, and then be able to implement and evaluate. And so how do we create that kind of space where collaboration can be evolved to be able to offer everything to the community that we're looking for? So there's a whole bunch in that. But there's also an opportunity for us to think, well, hold on a second, maybe not so much an opportunity, but maybe a fallback or a default, that we go, yeah, we know all about collaboration, but honestly, it just takes too much time. So there's an opportunity here. Our next poll, Moselle, if you don't mind, is the question here is, when I think about collaborating with others, I often think, and you guys can, all of you folks can select as many as come to mind. When I think about collaborating with others, I often think, I love that. 5 out of 5. Everybody's super excited to find out who I can work and think with. Yeah, I don't know where to start. I don't know where to start either. Sometimes. And I super appreciate. I don't want to give up control. And we'll talk a lot about you know, what are some of the attributes that we as individuals need to be considering when we're collaborating, but also what do we want to be looking for. So thanks very much for all of those. And I'm going to guess that folks certainly did select more than just one in there. Because all of them are really quite valid. So hopefully our time together will allow, you know, maybe an idea or two that you haven't given thought to, or a different way of considering what collaboration may be able to offer you. So gave the context for collaboration in a community. I just want to set up another context for collaboration, because collaboration, as you can appreciate, can be as narrow as it is to the problem you're trying to solve, or it can be as broad as I just want someone to collaborate for or with. But the piece is that if we have a sense of where the organization is, then it's going to be helpful with regards to who might you be collaborating with and why. So we have a lot of conversations with clients around. So tell me a little bit about where you are in the life cycle of your organization. And honestly, organizations have life cycles very similar to what individuals do. This particular model is from a colleague of mine who I had the privilege of working with, Susan Kenny Stevens. She is out of the US, has some really great stuff around this whole idea of nonprofit life cycles. So what I want you to do is just think as I go through each of these. There's actually 7 stages, and you'll see the one as I get to it. That's not showing there just yet. But I want you to think about, okay, so where might we be where your organization is? Can you think about maybe the different journeys or chapters that have moved you from one phase to the next? Because each one of the phases has an opportunity for a different type of collaboration. So the first one is the idea stage. And you can appreciate that this idea stage is really super loose. It's kind of like, I kind of have an idea that there's a need out there, or I do think that there might be something that needs to happen. I often think of the idea stage is happens on the back of a napkin with a really good bottle of wine or a couple of good beers. And it's really thinking about, okay, there might be something. So from that idea, you move into the startup phase. And the startup is you've gone for it. You may or may not have actually registered as either a charity or a not-for-profit. You've started to, with real intentionality, seen the way in which you can meet the need for what your idea was about. So you're starting to pull from a lot of different people usually. It's really messy, it's really chaotic, it's really fun, it's hugely exhausting. And then you start to get some traction and you move into growth. Growth can also be referred to as getting organized. And when you think about getting organized in a not-for-profit, and honestly, getting organized in any organization, it's a very different skill set than the idea phase. And so when you think about the growth and the getting organized, this is where you want to start thinking about, all right, do I, as the person with the idea, have the right skill set? Do I need to start bringing people in? Who do I need to be collaborating with to ensure that this getting organized and growth phase actually catches on and sticks? So very different types of conversations, different people that you got to bring in, and honestly, different leadership styles. So then we move into maturity. And maturity is when you've got things organized, you've got some really good systems and processes in place, you've got ways in which you can measure your successes, you've got advocacy. processes and approaches well established, and you're starting to get known, you have good brand recognition. And so the types of collaboration that you do at maturity would be more along how do we continue at this phase without being so internally focused. So the maturity collaboration is making sure that you're still looking outside of yourself to be able to meet the needs of the community. Organizations, just like humans, have the decline and the terminal stages. And the decline is when maybe in the maturity phase, you haven't been paying as much attention to diversifying your programs, making sure that that you're maintaining the share of the audience that you need to, that you maybe haven't been looking after your funding processes, and it can start to decline. The other thing that can decline, which I think is quite lovely and actually move right down into terminal, is many years ago, which goes to show how long I've been in organizational development consulting, is not-for-profits were actually created for a short-term fix. So there was a need that was identified in the community, and the intent of the not-for-profit was to meet and eliminate the need. So in not-for-profit life cycles, it was a very natural expectation that the organization would no longer be needed because they had done the work that they needed to. So, I mean, it was really a lovely good news story. Now, our culture has changed, our society has changed, and honestly, I think that our not-for-profit organizations are doing such important work that was done previously by governments, was done previously by churches, was done previously by neighbors. Like it's such a fascinating world of not-for-profit that is meeting such important needs. So think about where might your organization be in that life cycle model. Now, the other phase here is the turnaround phase. And this phase is when folks start to see their organization, as I had mentioned, in decline. They're starting to see that the programs aren't necessarily meeting the needs of the community like they had in the past. Maybe the funding wasn't there. Maybe they actually need to be advocating in a different type of a way. Then the leadership of the organization looks at it from a turnaround. How do we go back into that phase between startup and growth? How do we reimagine what it is that our organization needs to be doing? So there's these 7 phases, 7 cycles of in an organization. And I want you to just think for a moment. So where might your organization be? Now, I am going to, for those of you that have looked ahead on the Bow Valley Not-for-Profit website, I get to come back on in September and talk about strategic planning. And if you do happen to join us again, you'll see this model show up, because I think it's a really important and easy one for organizations to find their way. And it's when you see yourself in a particular cycle that it helps you and your leaders and your funders and your colleagues begin to have different types of more intentional conversations with regards to what do you need to be doing. So in this conversation, who and why and what do you need to be collaborating about? So Mazel, if you wouldn't mind, this is the last poll, folks. Just give us a sense. Where do you think your organization is? What life cycle? What phase of the life cycle, sorry?
I'll jump in here, Kathi, and say that Christy Wolf added in the comment box that Wolfpack Warriors are somewhere between startup and growth. So I guess that can happen as well, where you're kind of in between 2 stages.
Oh, I think that's a super good point, Moselle and Christy, is that nothing is nice and tight, right? Like it's not like, oh, look, and now we're in the next phase. Oh, and now we're in the next, because there is a journey. And so that phase, Christy, between startup and growth is thinking about, okay, so who could you, should you, do you need to be collaborating with in order to deepen and further intentionally state what Wolfpack is going to be doing as a not-for-profit. I think that there was a, oh, there we go. All right. So idea, startup, growth, maturity phase. Excellent. Super. Yeah, super, folks. That's great. I just want to share this is a bit of a shout out. So Christy, we have the privilege of working with the ACWS. So that's the Alberta Council for Women's Shelter. I don't think it's council, it might be Alberta Council for Women's Shelter. So just a super example of the Wolfpack collaborating with ACWS and hosting I'm not sure if it was Women's Day, or Christy, by all means, drop it in the chat box, but it really was an excellent example of collaboration in support of bringing just a number of organizations together. So I thought it was, yeah, I thought that was a really cool thing to be able to experience. So I just want you to be thinking about, so wherever you are in the organization, or sorry, in your life cycle, thinking about, okay, so why should I bother? Why should I be thinking about collaboration, and what does that mean? So why bother? Well, as I think any of us, and I should probably say all of us, can totally appreciate that the value of collaboration in a not-for-profit organization is the opportunity to save on administrative costs. I think that if we just think about if we could get multiple organizations being able to use maybe the same facility, be able to have similar suppliers, be able to have the same receptionist as, you know, folks are coming in. I think that's probably one of the top reasons why collaboration is going to be a benefit. So the second one, improving on the range of services. So when we think about the range of services for any organization in our community, we get to stop and learn and be able to understand that each of the different not-for-profits have different, or have various focuses, while still working toward the overarching same goal. And so if we can work with other not-for-profits that can give your organization access to new tools and resources, then that becomes a win. So it's about improving the range of services that our Bow Valley community receives by being able to collaborate with more than one, or just yourself, with regards to the services that are being offered. I don't think there's any surprise at all about the opportunity that collaboration gives with bringing in new ideas. The idea, or the concept of being able to be in conversation and to be able to create a collaborative think tank per se, really can create solutions to problems that there's probably a very good chance that I would never be able to on my own, but because people come in with their own experiences, their own lenses, it really does allow those ideas to come up in a, hey, I never thought of that kind of a way. I do love the piece on add on to new leadership. When we have the opportunity for leaders in not-for-profits, and that's leaders at all levels of the organization, it's leaders in the board of directors, and come in to get to know one another, there's an opportunity for being able to share the talent, being able to invite leaders into other organizations. Honestly, it's a beautiful and kind of magical succession planning that can happen when we're collaborating and getting to know one another from a leadership lens and leadership perspective. Sharing board members, we really strongly recommend that if possible, and if it makes sense, that you have board members that are sitting on one organization, so that they really can bring the fuller knowledge into each of the different organizations. I think increasing brand exposure, if you can know what other organizations are doing in a non-competitive way, but a collaborative and build it up and far more intentionally expansive, then you get to share other people's brands. You get to share that things are, this is what else is going on in our community, and this is how your not-for-profit is actually a piece of that. Strengthening the advocacy voice, this one I cannot say enough of. There's always strength in numbers. We know that. And when it comes to our smaller not-for-profits, it's really easy for our voices to get lost or drowned out by larger organizations, or just never get a seat at the table. And I'd like to think that our government's listening to us. I'd like to think that if we can collectively and collaboratively come together with an advocating voice on behalf of a community with common needs, I think that we just have a much, much better chance of being heard. And then, of course, just expanding programs, just that whole opportunity with collaboration is to be able to maybe see if there's similar programs that you have that maybe can be combined with others, and maybe be made stronger by adding different components. Being able to expand on the programs your organization offers within the communities is probably one of the greatest values of collaborating with another not-for-profit. And so that has to occur through getting to know one another. It has to occur in ways that you're working towards that common goal. So the why bother, I think that there's all kinds of different ways to think about, yeah, you know what, we probably should. But then how do we do it? Like, it's all fine and well. Yeah, sure, fine, Kathy. I get it. But how do we actually start to do it? So this next slide is the worksheet that that Moselle has included, or I think just maybe sent out to you, or is included as a download option. And, I think for the large part, we all know this. We all know these 6 steps, but I think sometimes we forget that we do need to be quite intentional when we're inviting others into the conversation to collaborate. So my invitation here is really give some thought to what it is that you want to collaborate about. I'm gonna say, do that before you start to think about other people of who you're gonna bring in. And honestly, sometimes it's in our collaboration that these 6 things are answered. But just hold loosely that I'm gonna say, let's start with these 6 statements, and then you go find someone. Because what is the problem that you want to address? So because collaboration is more than a discussion, because collaboration is more than networking and getting to know folks, but collaboration is actually about working together to solve something. What is it that you want to solve? What is the problem that you want to address? I was chatting with a friend of mine, and we live in such a beautiful place to be out in the forest, because we were out hiking, and actually I think we were out cross-country skiing, so this goes back to this winter. And she was a single mom raising 3 kids. She's now all her kids are grown up, but she has a very strong sense that the Bow Valley needs something for single moms. And so she's at the at the Elevation Place, and she's a climber. And so she is in conversation with these single moms as they're belaying, as they're climbing. I mean, there's these lovely moments that we have. So she's talking to single moms as she's climbing. She's telling me about it as we're cross-country skiing. And I said, so what honestly is the problem that you're wanting to address? And she didn't really have an answer. Like, she knew emotionally there's a need, but she said, good question, right? Like, so these are the things that if we want to go in with some real focus, be able to map out on, what's the problem that we want to address. In her situation, she was able to articulate it in a way that single moms need more support than they have right now in the Bow Valley. So what does that mean? Well, now she gets to bring in people to be able to have those collaborative conversations. But the problem for her was single moms don't have the support that she believes is important for them. So what's the problem that you might want to address? How would you define the problem? So how would you define it? It makes me think a little bit about the SMART acronym that some of you folks might be familiar with, the specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. If we can take ourselves through steps, it helps us in our thinking. It helps us be able to articulate what is it that I'm looking for. Because we want you to be thinking about, so what might be the possible causes for the problem? So what's happening in our entire valley that is actually the cause for the problem that you've been able to identify? Are there other causes than the one that maybe you've just come up with? But if you create just kind of a straw dog or a skeleton response to each of these questions, then all of a sudden it's going to be much more, I'm not going to say necessarily easy, but it's certainly going to be helpful for when you move into conversation with folks. What are some of the different ways that you could solve the problem? What are the things that you individually could, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Because when we move into collaborating with others, what I'm not encouraging is that your ideas get lost. And that actually is one of the reasons why in the earlier poll, we'd ask, well, I don't really want to give up control, or, I really don't, it's going to take too much time. Like, we want you thinking about why might you not be reaching out to folks? But by answering these 6 questions, it readies you to reach out to folks. So different ways that could solve the problem, what would a successful solution look like, and which of the possible solutions best fits that solution criteria. So all of these, all of your responses to these 6 questions really does start you in down a path for more intentional and transparent collaboration. And the piece is that I would strongly encourage is hold each of, I would say, number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, hold them loosely. Number 1 is the one that you really want to get an anchor on. Number 1 is the problem, but then you're allowing the conversation to unfold in responses to those remaining 5. So engaging with others with the intent to collaborate, to come to a solution, to be able to achieve a common goal. So engaging with others. So once we engage with others, then the opportunity here, of course, is what are some of the skill sets that you're looking for? And I'm going to suggest that you're looking for in yourself, but you're also looking for in others. Trust is first and foremost, not a surprise at all. And this trust piece, I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Patrick Lencioni. He has a really nice, has done a really nice piece of work on trust. And trust isn't about that I trust you to do what you say you're going to do. I mean, it is for sure. Don't get me wrong on that. But trust, particularly when it comes to collaborating, trust is, I trust you enough that I can make mistakes in front of you. I trust you enough that I can be vulnerable as we're trying to figure out what it is that we're supposed to be doing on behalf of our community. And it's that level of vulnerability in the relationships that we have that I think really does offer the greatest and sweetest fruit of the engagement. Is that I know there's a problem. This is what I think the problem is. I'm not really sure if I know how to solve it, but I trust you. And so what's lovely, I'm actually looking at Mazel. This is the downside, folks, is that I can't see the rest of you that in the screens, but as I'm looking at Mazel, I trust you enough to be vulnerable and go, yeah, you know what? I think this is important. I think you might be able to help with this. I really don't know what I'm supposed to be doing or what we could be doing next. So trust, that's what we want to be looking for is, and of course, collaboration is about relationships, as it says there. And at the very foundation of any relationship is both trust in that I can be vulnerable and that trust that I trust that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. But I think vulnerability is the sweet spot that we don't necessarily pay enough attention to. And also too, if we have any Brené Brown fans, she's all about the vulnerability. And I have to confess, I really was not a huge fan of Brené Brown a couple of years ago until I really realized that whole idea of vulnerability is what's getting in our way, man. And so now I'm a diehard, all her podcasts. So then the next one is, what are you looking for in yourself and what are you looking for in others? And it's tolerance. It's because if we don't have tolerance for our naivety, our ability to make errors, but also to our tolerance that others are not going to have the same thinking as I am. And we really want to be able to be tolerant in a way that we're seeking out individuals that have different skill sets than we do. This is also, that's the second, that different skill sets comment is the second half of that worksheet that we had sent out. But that whole ability to be able to seek out people that have different skill sets, that have different knowledge, and then be tolerant in order to be able to listen and adapt and pull from it as we're asking them to be tolerant of us. And without that level of tolerance, we're going to try and impose our values and ideas on others as the idea, the value, rather than a idea or a value to consider. Self-awareness, if any of you folks are emotionally intelligent, if any of you are aware of emotional intelligence, you'll know that self-awareness is taught first and foremost with regards to our ability to recognize our feelings and concerns so that we can better express them. We're also inviting you to look for that in people that you're collaborating with, because that level of self-awareness is going to be super helpful when we get into the weeds with things, when we get into, yeah, this isn't my sweet spot, or yeah, this is, I know this is what happens when I reach this point. So that whole place where it's, I'm looking after my level of who I am, and I'm really interested in working with others that can also both be self-aware in order to then self-manage. Excuse me. And then the fourth one here is be prepared for conflict. Like, oh my gosh, if we could just get better at conflict. And that's small c conflict, to be able to just, as it says there, just step into our humanness and be able to be open and willing and not necessarily eager, but certainly open to step into being in disagreement with someone. So how well can we engage in conflict to be able to collaborate and ultimately choose the best way forward? Because we're not interested in folks that you're going to bring in and just, oh, Kathi, that's a great idea. Oh, Kathi, why don't we do that? Oh, Kathi, why don't we do that? As soon as that starts to happen, I start thinking, oh, no. This isn't what we're looking for here, folks. And so these 4 skills for ourselves and for others that we're inviting in really does kind of parachute into the worksheet. So someone equally committed to addressing the problem, who might that be for you? Once you've identified what that problem is, who might that person that is equally as committed? Already mentioned someone who has different skills than you. And I do love the third point on the worksheet is select someone that you like, someone that you enjoy spending time with. I mean, we get to pick and choose. And so when you're thinking about collaboration, think about folks that you admire, that you think are interesting. And the other piece here with regards to skills and things to be considering is don't be afraid to put things down in writing. Don't hesitate to, when you start to move into collaboration, to be able to, hey, can we take some notes here? Can we be, so what are we deciding? One of the things that we find far more often than I'd ever like to admit to is that we get into some really rich and wonderful conversation. Nobody takes notes. Nobody makes a notation of what was decided or agreed to. We come back 2 to 3 weeks later and almost have the identical conversation. So I've just shifted from a kind of that emotional skills to the technical skills. And so if someone could please just help everyone stay organized going forward. I'm a huge fan of administrative folks, administrative staff. I think one of the things that has happened since COVID is that some of the larger funders have said that, yeah, we'll fund towards administration costs now. For the longest time, it was just ridiculous that funders are saying, no, we're only going to fund programs. Well, who actually creates the programs? So I'm quite delighted that more and more funders are putting into administrative costs. I'm also a huge fan of, and this is in the for-profit world, is if we could get in assistance into all kinds of different departments, because, you know, I'm going to suggest that folks on this call or on this in this meeting, like, in order for us to get our really great ideas out and in conversation, we don't get bogged down by taking minutes and following up and setting up appointments, et cetera, et cetera. But that's just actually a slight pet peeve slant. So there you go. But don't hesitate to take notes and follow through with them. So just coming into the end of our conversation today, you know, collaboration does not come naturally for us. Being individual, I got this. No, I don't need any help. No, I'm fine. No, really, I'm good. Meanwhile, we're drowning, or we don't really necessarily have all of the ideas that we could. Collaboration is not a natural way for us. So these are just a few ideas of why we don't. And not knowing the answer. And I'd almost say not even really knowing what the problem is. And that goes back to our earlier slide, is that if we can get real clear on what the problem is, usually the answer will start to surface. But I'm pretty hesitant, or it could be said that I could be hesitant to collaborate if I actually go out to myself and say, here's the problem, but I actually don't know how to solve it. I don't feel good about that. Can we get over that, right? It's okay that we don't know the answer. Unclear or uncomfortable roles. Well, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be doing. Can I ask Moselle to do this? Like, would I be imposing on her? So I'm not really clear on who's going to do what. So I'll do nothing. Too much talking and not enough doing. I mean, again, the amount of meetings that I'm sure all of us have been is going, wow, that was an awesome meeting. Right. But what did we actually accomplish? Right. Nothing. And then the flip side here, actually not so much the flip side, it's actually a direct combo of too much talking, but just too much information, too much oversharing, too much coming at us that actually gets in the way of being able to define the problem or be able to get to how the problem is going to be solved. So just too much coming at us. Fear of fighting. I don't want to get into a conversation that I might have to disagree, or I don't, I'm not comfortable with conflict. Absolutely, hands down, folks, collaboration's more work. Absolutely it is. Is it going to be better work? I'm going to say probably absolutely it is. So be prepared for that. More hugs than decisions. I did love this one. This one is, and you can see 8 dangers of collaboration. Trust me, there is no shortage of information on Google around the idea of collaboration. But you know, oh my gosh, this is a love fest. Are you kidding me? And then the other one I thought was quite interesting. It's hard to know who to praise and who to blame, and does it matter? That would be my take, is does it matter? So wanting to be able to pay attention to, you know, why don't we, why don't you, or any of those 8 areas, kind of the ones that make you think, maybe it's time that I just got over myself. So after a whole bunch of, almost a little bit like I feel I was holding the fire hose as I was talking at you for the last 55 minutes, I just want to leave the last slide. And do you want to go far or do you want to go fast? And we get to pick. We absolutely get to pick. And it's also a question that somewhere along the line, maybe you could be asking as well. So just a couple of minutes, Moselle, I've got 12:56 on my clock. Any comments or questions that have popped into the chat box that you think might be, and I'm going to open it up now, and please feel free if folks have comments or questions with regards.
There was a comment here from Jeannie McPherson. I love the idea of being aware if we are in circular time, and when appropriate, moving into linear time to help move things towards outputs.
Well, and to be able to know when is the sweet spot. When is that circular time no longer serving you? And there's a lovely image that I was introduced to, and it's the conversation reaches a peak, and it goes really well, and everybody's in it, and then there's that point where if you keep talking, it completely loses its value. So if I'm understanding that statement, Moselle, is really pay attention to when is it time to then move to action, and can you see it, or are you open to it being seen?
Yeah, that's great. So we've got a note from Karen Thomas. She'd like to share some of the information on their Facebook page. So we'll connect Kathi about that afterwards. I think she'd also asked if it might be possible to get some of the names that you referred to in your presentation so that people can look up more information about them. One of them was it Bunny Brown?
Brene.
Brene, oh, sorry, yeah. Brene Brown. Yeah, of course.
Not of course, Moselle, not of course.
I hadn't connected it though, and I wrote it down. And Patrick Lanzoni, was it?
Lencioni. Wow, yeah, I have a book here. Lencioni. Patrick Lencioni.
Okay, great. Yeah, you had so many great resources in your presentation. I've been taking notes as you've been talking, and I'd also love to share some of the references and some of the things that you included in your presentation on the Bow Valley Nonprofits Facebook page, if that's all right with you too.
Yeah, no, absolutely, for sure. And honestly, I can't say enough, Moselle, about the Bow Valley Not-for-Profit, the resources that you folks have, that you have done just a phenomenal job. So I'm hoping everybody that's on our call today has gone in, and it really is one of the better sites for resources. So well done.
Oh, thanks so much. I appreciate that. It's really been an honor to be involved in this project. And thank you so much for all your insights today. That was a really, really fantastic session. I learned so much from it, and it's really inspired me to understand what solutions I can come up with through collaboration for some of the problems I'm facing. And so, yeah, I hope others feel the same way. And Yeah, and we'll send out a follow-up email with your presentation slides and your contact information if anyone would like to follow up with you.
Sure. That's super. Thanks, everybody. Now get out and enjoy our beautiful Tuesday.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Kathy. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Everyone, thanks for attending. Bye-bye.